Dudes, what's happening? It's Trent here, and today I've got for you a Galaxy's Edge illustration. This is for a series of books written by Jason Anspach and Nick Cole. Normally I do a lot more whimsical fantasy type of stuff recently, but I've also been known to at times do kind of more hardcore or heavier, more mature type of stuff, like my Ninja Turtles painting and my Metroid painting. And those are the pieces that these guys liked. So they were like, hey, can you do that? Can you paint one of our characters? Of course, man, I would love to see. I'd never seen any sci-fi books with this kind of an art style on the covers. So let's jump into the commentary on this. So recently, if you watch my channel, you would have seen my 5 tips for doing an art book, for creating an art book. Now, this isn't an art book, it's just a cover, but the principles remain the same. And you'll see that I created a template there so that I know what I'm working with. I know what my compositional space is, and I'm thinking about it with that logo in mind as I'm kind of really just getting out as quick of doodles as I possibly can. The doodles are trash. They're completely throwaway, so don't be afraid. A lot of times really just that sketch phase is and that thumbnail phase is really just to loosen up your wrist and sort of accept that everything's okay. It's going to be all right. That's your building your comfort zone. You're laying down your blankets. You're putting on those really cozy socks that your grandmother knit for you, and they got a couple of holes in them, but you know what? They still just feel good, you know? And that's what you're doing. Your rough thumbnails are really just your dirty old socks that you can find a little comfort in. If at any point it gets too uncomfortable, you can toss them out or you can stitch them up. I think a lot of times people put way too much pressure on themselves too early on in a piece. And sometimes you just got to like be in it for a while and be comfortable with the failures and be comfortable with the mistakes. At some points, I even started to pull up like old rifle images or pieces from other paintings and then trace over them just to get a sense of the spatial sort of relationship between shapes. I've done a lot of other videos about composition, and this one isn't as much of like a tutorial as just kind of like, you know, going along with me for the ride on this painting. And so all I'll say about composition is make sure that you're continually checking with your template to see what information is going to be presented on the front cover alone, because people don't pick up a book and look at the wraparound immediately. They look at that after they open it up. You have to think about it from the consumer standpoint at all times. So that's why you keep seeing me zoom out. You keep seeing, because if it's a thumbnail on Amazon or something like that, is it going to get a good read? Usually simpler is better when you're talking thumbnails. And that's something I learned from doing a lot of icons for League of Legends and World of Warcraft. Hitting it with that really strong red is a deliberate, intentional thing. So everything else in the painting is completely desaturated for the most part, but that bright saturated red is just going to grab your attention. It's going to grab your eye. So everything else on the shelf is just going to look like what, I don't know, blah blah blah, same old sci-fi cover, blah blah blah. What the fuck is that? It's going to really pop out. And that's the whole freaking point of a book cover. You got to sell them with the cover. You got to grab their attention, and you have to look different than everything else that everybody else is doing. Well, that's the goal anyway, to look at the landscape of everything that everybody else is doing and really ask yourself, where is nobody looking? Like what is something that I haven't seen a lot of other people do? And there may be something else similar to this. It's just what I reach for. It's my goal. It's what I'm aiming for. Is I'm reaching for something that is unlike what I've seen in that context. Context is so important. Pay attention to, you know, where you are. What is the landscape? What is everybody else doing? What is something that nobody in that space is already doing? And can I do that? Do I have the tools and equipment and resources to be able to do that? One of the things you're noticing right here is how I'm putting together all of my thumbnails into a single sheet, and then I number them so that the authors can go through and say, no, we really like this one, or oh, we really want to see that one get worked out. We want to take this other one to final, whatever it is. And so they had selected the first one that I had done, and they'd asked me to take that one to final, and I was actually kind of relieved. We did end up kind of deciding to do both of them, but the other piece will be a little bit less detailed. It's just going to be something that's kind of finished up for a newsletter, I think. I don't know the details about that. Check out their website for more info on that one. One of the key ingredients to this art style is utilizing negative space. So sometimes I sketch things in like an outer edge to something, and then I just white out or I paint out the edge lighting so that it ends up really amplifying the shadow space. And then, of course, I'm using gradient maps to give a little bit of color to the whole thing. Gradient maps allow you to work within, mostly just focus on values and composition and construction without having to worry too much about materials. You can also get like a cool edge light kind of a burn and things like that. And I did actually end up adding in some dodge and burn effects, here and there to really amplify certain areas, back things off. It's a sort of a style that I'm still refining, but so it might look really super loose and sketchy, but there's a lot of construction behind it, a lot of method to the madness here. This was really, they gave me a lot of freedom. They told me that I was very free to redesign the character however I saw fit, as long as it really captured and kept the essence of the original intention of the way that the character is presented within the story. I decided early on that I wanted to go with this very loose kind of a sketchy art style. My usual kind of CannonBallers art style or Twilight Monk art style would not suit the universe of Galaxy's Edge. This was a gritty, gnarly world they've created. The first chapter of the book that I was just reading says, the galaxy is a hot, stinking dumpster fire. That's not something that you want kind of cartoony, cute-looking animals running around in, unless if they're on fire, I suppose. I want to clarify that I am a gun for hire. I'm a freelance illustrator, and they hired me to do this. And I'm very selective. I've reached the point in my career where I get to be very selective of the projects that I choose to work on, and I like this book. It's a fun read, and more importantly, I like those guys. They're really cool to work with. I realize I'm absolutely spoiled. You can't expect to have that kind of trust or freedom when working with somebody else's creation usually. So I'm really grateful that they entrusted me with that. And hopefully I'll get a chance to do a little bit more. I want to thank you so much for stopping by. I certainly appreciate the company. It would be a little awkward if I were sitting here alone talking to myself in my office. Wait, I kind of am. Anyway, if you're interested in my art and you would like to see more of my process and get some of my brushes and find out how I do what I do, I have made all that available to you over on a website called Gumroad, and the link is in the description below. There you can buy box sets of tutorials. In fact, I collect everything that I do for the most part. If I have the legal right to do so, I make a recording of it and I make that available to you at near real-time speed or with specific tips and tricks on how I perform each of the techniques that I use to complete my illustrations and my many different art styles that I do. Thanks again so much for stopping by, and dudes, remember, if perhaps under the circumstances one were to select the option of illustrating a science fiction novel cover, it would not be out of the realm of possibility or beyond one's expectation to perform such a task with some freaking passion, man. Yes. A good day, sir, and good night.